Now that John Mark Reynolds has pointed it out, all of our rooms in this building are kind of lame. The decorations-wise, you catch that in his last talk? Why don't we have, you work here, why don't we have paintings in any of these rooms? Like murals or something? Some color wouldn't kill us around here.
Well, we need sponsors.
Yeah, even to paint the walls, we need sponsors, that's true. If any of you are independently wealthy and would like there to be color on the walls in these rooms, get with us afterwards. We have something to talk to you about.
Have you ever stayed in one of our rooms?
No, I haven't. I've looked in a few of them, but I've never stayed in them. They were pretty unadorned too, the ones I saw anyway. Yep. Yeah. We must have been on a real budget when we painted this joint. But we got flashlights. Just in case the lights go out. At least one.
You could just totally ditch this topic and we could all sit around telling ghost stories.
Yeah. I'm not sure which would be more interesting at this point, I tell you the truth.
Depends. How good are you at ghost stories?
That's right.
How good are you at
Fair
your
question.
job?
Yeesh. Much worse, I'm afraid, than at ghost stories, and I'm not great at ghost stories. Yep. No. I don't really do projectors much in my teaching. I'm going to make you all wait with bated breath for 3 more minutes.
Actually, isn't that the least favorite thing about teaching anything? Is you just, people get there early.
Yeah, it's kind of the awkward way.
You're just standing up there.
Yeah.
I should do something.
I need to prepare an interpretive dance or something for these moments. Learn to juggle. Be cool. I think also we don't need an hour and a half for lunch at this event next year. We need to remember, if we're just going to have the box lunches, it doesn't take anyone an hour and a half to eat a sandwich. And if it does,
Well,
I don't know.
I still have.
You have your sandwich left. Sorry. We get sandwiches though. We'd start charging more and have like steaks for. What?
Or you could charge not more and have steaks.
That would be nice. But I think if we had that kind of money, we'd paint the walls first. So maybe.
What is so bad about the walls?
Well, I don't. John Mark's the one who started it. I just felt like he felt bad about it. I think we should get all the faculty kids together with crayons and let them just go nuts. You know, it'll be painted up to about here and on the walls. It'd be cool though. Yeah, that's probably true. That's true. Yeah. We're giving them scissors. We're giving them crayons.
Yeah, but if you want them to get like more than 4 feet off the ground.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good luck in there, kids. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You get kids. You know how it works. I think your kids are gonna be pretty tall, though. Our first is in the back there, asleep. Well, at least until I start getting excited about this topic, he's asleep. He's 4 months old, and he's already pretty tall. We're super pleased about that, so in case you didn't know. All right, I think it's close enough, yeah. Well, you guys enjoying the conference so far? Were you all here for the debate last night? Was everyone here for the debate? How'd you guys think that went? Sort of wondering about feedback. Like the tone, I thought the tone was really nice. They were really respectful to each other. I thought Michael Sherman was hilarious too, by the way. Yeah. People are asking me, who won? I'm like, well, it wasn't really a. But one person did concede the other person's point, so that is typically a win in a debate. But still, I thought they were both really gracious to each other. Okay. Well, as the program says, I'm Keith Loftin. I teach here, in the college and in the apologetics program in the seminary. And I want to talk a little bit in this session of the Stand Firm Conference about God and the reasonableness of flourishing. God and the reasonableness of flourishing. To sort of get at our point, what we want to talk about here, let's begin with a basic question. Think to yourself, what do all persons want? What is it that deep down all people seem to desire in life? Well, we're all thinking of lots of different things, but what they all do seem to have in common is that all persons, regardless of rich or poor families, regardless of differences in age or differences in taste, regardless of different personality types, different educational backgrounds, it seems to me true that everybody desires to be happy. Everyone desires happiness. As the 17th century French philosopher Blaise Pascal puts it, he says, all men seek happiness. There are no exceptions. However different the means they may employ, they all strive toward this goal. The reason why some go to war and some do not is the same desire in both, but interpreted in different ways. The will never takes the least step except to that end, namely happiness. This is the motive, he says, of every act of every man. And I think he's pretty much on point about that. So, far from being a modern discovery, he's an Enlightenment philosopher, but this is no Enlightenment reality. This is not something we discovered in the 17th century. This insight was well known to the ancients. The Greek philosopher Plato, for example, is writing a little over 2,000 years before Blaise Pascal. He asks rhetorically, do not all men desire happiness? Perhaps this is one of those ridiculous questions which ought not to be asked by a sensible man. For what human being is there who does not desire happiness? Right. Yeah, again, it's no new insight. People have always desired happiness. You don't need a PhD in psychology or philosophy to know that people have this innate desire for happiness, that it seems to be part and parcel to human nature. I bet if we conducted a technically non-scientific poll of everybody on the planet, about 95% of the persons who respond would confirm their desire for happiness, with the remaining 5% just being those who take pleasure in being contrarian. So I think, in other words, everybody would confirm their desire for happiness. That was a joke, it's fine, don't worry. When it comes to happiness, at least in contemporary American culture, narrowing in a little bit, I think that most of our contemporaries seem to agree with the political philosopher John Stuart Mill, who defines happiness as pleasure and the absence of pain, and defines unhappiness as pain and the absence of or the privation of pleasure. In a word, this is called hedonism. And this is the idea that happiness is pleasure. Happiness defined as pleasure is the only intrinsic good in life, in other words. Go back to the things we were thinking about when we asked, what do men and women desire in life today? People seek fulfillment of these things in a variety of ways. We won't make a full list here, but just to get our wheels turning a little bit, what are some things people are after? People desire the accumulation of wealth. They want to see their bank accounts growing. They are pursuing the almighty dollar, as the saying goes. For other people, perhaps it's increasing physical attractiveness or just physical health. Normal people apparently go to the gym and exercise. I'm not in this crowd. But other people are way past that, sort of like gym rat types, where they seem to take as their principle of happiness just tweaking their appearance just so. I will only be happy if, my arms were as big as like some guy's leg, this kind of thing. Maybe they continue to have one after another cosmetic surgeries. Think if I just looked a little bit different, say, on my nostrils or something, then I would be happy. For others, it's power. This is a desire that many of us are familiar with. The desire to have power over others or to gain closer proximity to the sources of power. Think of this like office politics or certainly in national politics. Maybe as Freud held, it's sexual gratification. I think for lots of people, having one after another sexual exploit is their way of chasing happiness. Owning things, cars and boats and whatever it is people who have money own. I don't know much about that one. Maybe it's just having pleasurable experiences, taking exotic trips, having over and over this insatiable desire to win, be victorious, say, in sporting events or things of that sort, becoming famous. People desire their happiness. They desire these pleasurable feelings in quite a variety of ways. He's not in here to make fun of him, but if my good friend Paul Gould were in here, I would talk about his weird desire to collect all the Justin Bieber albums and like posters and collectibles on the market. And if you see him, ask him about that. It's not true, but act like it is. We could extend this list, I mean, almost endlessly, as we all know, to include all kinds of countless other means by which people pursue their own happiness. And naturally, different things make different people feel happy. And your feeling of happiness, of course, is not identical to my feeling of happiness. Now, we must acknowledge that these means can indeed make us feel happy. I think that that's true. I'm going to borrow the Oxford English Dictionary's definition of happiness and say that such pursuits can achieve for us, quote, the state of pleasurable contentment, or contentment of mind, or with one's circumstances. Yeah, I think this is correct as far as it goes. But as we all know, not only do circumstances change multiple times during one day, just regularly, but defining happiness merely as a state of our feelings or our passions, I think, is to ask too much, and that's what I want to focus on for the next section here. Now, I don't mean to dismiss or even to denigrate our feelings. It's true that we have passions, we have feelings, and I would say these are valuable because they are put in us by our Creator, so they have some proper role, some proper place in our lives. But I want to say that true happiness, though, can be no more reduced to a feeling than tiramisu can be reduced to just ladyfingers, or the pleasure in receiving a gift can be reduced just to the wrapping paper and the bow. These things are an important part of it, but they're not reducible. This is because feelings are not permanent. They are fleeting, here one minute, gone the next. But it seems to me that we seem to know deep down that true happiness is no fleeting subjective state. It's permanent. Moreover, I think that we can, and I think that we frequently do, respond to circumstances in life with inappropriate feelings. You might be tempted to think that feelings can be right or wrong or mistaken or accurate, but that's a little bit of a mistake because feelings don't have truth value. They can be appropriate or inappropriate to different circumstances, and I think that's what I want to point out here. The feelings that we have at times are not the feelings that we ought to have at those times. For example, taking pleasure in the suffering or the ill fortune of somebody you dislike, say at work. And when this happens, it is an indicator of what the ancients call a disordered soul, a disordered soul. So not only are we prone to respond in circumstances inappropriately in terms of our feelings, more than that, our feelings are like the denizens of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. They are susceptible to manipulation. Well, what all of this adds up to, I think, what all of this means is that our feelings cannot be a reliable basis for substantive, permanent happiness. Besides, as the philosopher J.P. Moreland observes, the idea that happiness is mere pleasure leads to a paradox. He explains, quote, "The contemporary sense of happiness cannot be found by seeking it. If you've ever tried to be happy, you know this is true. If you spend all your time trying to be happy, well, you end up focusing all your attention on yourself and how happy you are, and as a result, you become a shriveled self who cannot live for any larger cause." So I think the idea here is a good one. The idea is that pursuing happiness through mere personal desires, doing the things this way, you can never find true happiness. In fact, like the scientist young Victor Frankenstein, who you recall had an inordinate desire for knowledge, which culminated in his giving birth to a monster. Like him, your pursuit of happiness in the wrong way may ultimately destroy you. So what then? What are we supposed to think about this? We all desire happiness. That seems to be a part of human nature. But like Sisyphus pushing his boulder eternally up the hill, are we constrained to an unhappy life in pursuit of our individual desires? Well, yes, I think we are actually, so long as we attempt to equate happiness with the pursuit of pleasurable feelings, with the satisfaction of our cravings. So long as that is our understanding, we will be with our desires like young Edmund, who, you recall, wanted nothing more than to taste that delightful Turkish delight one more time. So I ask again, what then? Well, the good news is I don't think we have to abandon our desire for our pursuit of happiness. At least I think we'll all agree that's good news. But if happiness is not merely pleasurable feelings, what is it? I want to suggest that we reconsider another, somewhat older view, a view that was commonplace among the ancients. And I'll quote here from a terrific book. I brought it for show and tell. This book by David Noggle, Reordered Love, Reordered Lives. This is an excellent book. I would recommend to you. He explains this book, quote, classically, among the Western philosophers and theologians, happiness denoted the state of the genuine fulfillment of human nature that resulted from being properly related as a person to the truth of reality. That's a mouthful, so allow me to say that one more time for you. He says, the ancients held that happiness is the state of genuine fulfillment of human nature that results from being properly related as a person to the truth of reality. The idea here, the ancients' idea, seems to be that rather than being merely a notion of pleasurable feelings, true happiness is a matter of two things. First, it's the fulfillment of human nature, and second, it involves a notion of being properly related to reality. So let's talk a little bit about each of these. First, fulfilling human nature. What is meant by nature, right? When we use the word nature today in the vernacular, we typically mean something like the great outdoors. And say, I'm going to go spend a day in nature. We just mean we're going to go like hiking or fishing or something. But this is just not how the ancients are using the term in this context whatsoever. Having noted that all people pursue happiness, although as we've seen, this doesn't mean the same thing to everybody, the ancient philosopher Aristotle makes a helpful distinction here. He distinguishes between instrumental good, that is sort of a kind of good that's only valuable in that it makes possible the acquiring of something else. And I think what Aristotle is getting at is sort of the way that we talk about money. Let me explain this here. Hardly anyone carries cash anymore, but suppose you have in one hand a $5 bill and you have in the other hand a $100 bill. You ask yourself, which of these is more valuable? What's the answer to that? Which one of those is more valuable? Well, you sort of get conflicting answers because it's unclear what valuable means in the context. Certainly, we know which one to treat as being more valuable. We treat the $100 bill as being more valuable. And by the way, if you do the opposite, get with me afterwards. I have a $5 bill. I want to work out a trade with you. We all know that we treat the $100 bill as being more valuable. But why? Not because in and of itself it's more valuable than the $5. I mean, they're both about the same size, about the same amount of paper, roughly the same amount of ink, is used on both. But the 100 we have all agreed to treat as more valuable in the instrumental sense because we can trade it up for more things than we can trade up a $5 bill for. This is the idea that I think Aristotle is getting at when he talks about instrumental good, good that's only valuable in as much as it helps you acquire more stuff. Well, the other side of Aristotle's distinction is what we might call intrinsic value. This is a kind of good that is valuable in its own right, or valuable in itself, not merely because it will help you acquire other things. In fact, most things which are intrinsically valuable cannot be used to acquire other things. Human life, for example, has intrinsic value. The thing that abhors us about human trafficking in part is that it treats human life as though it's of instrumental value when we all know that it isn't. So, wholly apart from how much or how little a given person will accomplish as an adult economically, or how famous that person will become, regardless of those things, we know that all human life is intrinsically valuable. So, with this distinction in hand, Aristotle points out that happiness must be intrinsically valuable. Otherwise, we would have to say that we pursue happiness in order to be, well, something else. What would it be? Happy? Makes no sense. So, but I want you to notice something here. This goal, let me back up a bit. So happiness, again, is intrinsically valuable. It is valuable, it's because happiness is intrinsically valuable, I think I want to say, that the ancients were able to also say, truly, I think, that it is the goal at which all human action is directed. But notice, this goal is not regarded as a matter of personal preference by the ancients. It's not a matter of feelings for the ancients. Rather, it's connected to human nature. It may be helpful for you to think of this word nature as the set of characteristics that make a thing what it is. Set of characteristics that make a thing what it is. When you think about it this way, you realize everything has a nature. Rose bushes have a nature, have their nature. Seagulls have their nature, and it's different from the nature of rose bushes. Human beings have their nature, and we're quite different from both rose bushes and seagulls. There is, for each of these things, though, a proper goal or a proper aim, a purpose for their existence. Rose bushes have as their purpose to, well, grow and produce beautiful, fragrant rose blooms. And so, when healthy, we might say when functioning in the way that is proper for rose bushes to function, well, they will produce rose blooms. Seagulls, of course, don't produce rose blooms when they're healthy and functioning properly. I got to confess, I'm not entirely sure what seagulls do, but I know it's not produce rose blooms. So, kind of work with me on that one here. Producing rose blooms, in other words, is not proper to the nature of seagulls. I imagine it involves fish and water and windshields on cars and whatever things they do. When a thing is acting in accordance with its nature, that is, when a thing is relating correctly to nature in the way that is proper to that kind of a thing, then that thing is, as we say, flourishing. This is the conditions under which the thing flourishes. So how does a rose bush flourish? Well, again, by producing beautiful, fragrant blooms. As philosophers say, it flourishes rosebushously. Seriously, that is what philosophers say. How do seagulls flourish? Well, I don't know the details of that one, but it would be seagullishly. It's weird. Well, what does that look like? Again, I don't know. Well, along these same lines, getting back to our main point, the ancients held that human persons, too, are truly happy when we are flourishing. There is, in other words, a way of acting. There's a way of living for human persons that is proper to the nature of human persons. And happiness can only be had when we fulfill that purpose. That is, can only be had when we're living in accordance with our own nature. Suppose that you spend the next couple of weeks trying to live according to the nature of a rose bush. You will not flourish that way. You won't flourish anyway. You can't adopt the proper flourishing of a rose bush just because you really, really want to. It will be a delight for me to watch you try, but you will not succeed. And you certainly will not flourish as a human by attempting to pretend that you are a rose bush. Same thing works for seagulls, but you lose a lot quicker that way. So, since human nature is not up to us, since we all find ourselves on the scene in this world already in possession of human nature, we sort of don't get to choose whether we're going to have human nature. Neither is, I think I want to agree with the ancients and say, neither is true happiness up to us. It is not a matter of personal preference or subjective feelings. So we're back to first square one. What then? Well, here's where I think the Christian worldview is able to link up really nicely, really helpfully with the ancients in providing some explanatory basis here. I think, in other words, the Christian worldview has some resources that will be helpful for us in understanding happiness. I think Christianity in particular can offer an explanation of both the source of human nature, namely as given to us by the Creator. We read this in Genesis 1, as well as an understanding of how true happiness can be found. As a Christian apologist of the previous century, C.S. Lewis explains in his little book, The Problem of Pain, he explains that as the Creator, God has made humans to fit. He says there's a proper fit for us in the order of things in reality. In other words, there's a way in which we relate properly to the created order. That is, in other words, we fit humanly into the world. Or as Aristotle put it, we fit virtuously into the world. Lewis explains it this way, quote, "The place for which God designs humans in his scheme of things is the place they are made for. When they reach it, their nature is fulfilled, and their happiness is attained." In other words, a broken bone in the universe has been set. when we want to be something other than the thing God wants us to be, we must be wanting what, in effect, will not make us happy. This idea, I think, returns us really nicely to J.P. Moreland's pointing out that there is a paradox if we insist on defining happiness the wrong way. So what is it then that will make us truly happy? What is it that will lead to our flourishing? Well, here again, I think C.S. Lewis is quite helpful. He says, look, we're made to relate properly to God. As the New Testament frequently puts it, we're made to put on Christ. We're made to relate properly to God. In short, God himself, according to the Christian worldview, is our good. Lewis again. It is not simply that God has arbitrarily made us such that he is our only good. Rather, God is the only good of all creatures. And by necessity, each must find its good in that kind and degree of the fruition of God which is proper to its nature. The kind and degree may vary with the creature's natures, but that there could be any other good is an atheistic dream, close quote. So this is the upshot here. It looks like, in light of this, that we humans must find true happiness where it may be found. And as it turns out, it looks like it only can be found in one place. Lewis writes another fun little book called God in the Dock. He says, look, there are no substitutes for happiness in God. Our disparate desires, our disparate pleasures, as we've seen, will not suffice. So he writes, quote, you can't get second things by putting them first. You can get second things only by putting first things first. And so, to continue with Lewis, to be God, to be like God, and to share his goodness in creaturely response, or to be miserable, these are the only three alternatives. And if we buy the ancients' view of happiness, sure enough, this is the case. These are the only three alternatives. So how does this add up to an apologetic argument? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's not a normal argument where we lay out a syllogism. It's not an argument for God's existence. I think the value here is what John Mark Reynolds called earlier cultural apologetics, recognizing that there is diffused throughout humans a nature, a desire that is intrinsic to their nature, which stands in need of explaining. And it looks like the Christian worldview here has great resources in terms of being the best explanation for this feature of humans. So I think this is the line that I want to suggest this argument along. Okay, I want to tell you about these two books, save lots of time to talk about this. I think that the real value here will be talking through it. So there's a lot of books. This idea is not really new. This argument is becoming popular again in contrast to so-called, I just forgot what it's called, something psychology, I just went blank. Sorry gang, I just forgot the term I wanted. As you can see from the quotes, this is not a new idea. This is common in St. Augustine, this is common in Thomas Aquinas, it's common in C.S. Lewis. But the two best books that I know of to sort of talk through the nature of happiness and virtue are, again, David Nagel's Reordered Love, Reordered Lives, Learning the Deep Meaning of Happiness. Really enjoyed this one a lot. And J.P. Moreland and Klaus Isler's book, The Lost Virtue of Happiness, Discovering the Disciplines of the Good Life. So, all right, with that, let's take a little while and talk about it here. Questions. Talk about questions. I should be more clear about that. I get nervous in class when this happens. I'm like, either that lecture was so amazing, there's no questions left, or it was such a train wreck, no one knows where to start. Yeah, right.
Cool. So I think I agree with a lot of what you said, and this may simply be a matter of worries about emphasis. But while the ancients, all the ancients did think of happiness as something like fulfilling your function.
Right.
It wasn't just that. I mean, part of what we see in the tragedies is people who, for reasons outside of their control, wind up unhappy. Aristotle says something to the effect that having money is not everything, but not having it is. So could you say something about that? I mean,
Yeah,
do
sure.
you
That's a
think
great
that
point.
it seems
So
like
we don't want to be guilty of, when I say the ancients, it'd be like every single one of the ancients. Seneca is a well-known example of an ancient who totally, I mean, absolutely disagrees with that. He says, look, all about your personal pleasure, cut loose, run wild. The tragedies are interesting. You think like Aristophanes' plays here. I think that actually, although Aristophanes doesn't develop an account here the way that we sort of got from Plato and Aristotle and Nicomachean Ethics, he does set up plays that I think time after another support this. And so all the plays that are coming to my mind now are not that a person finds himself facing a fate out of his control. A person finds himself facing circumstances that are out of his control, but then his own nature either comes through in a helpful or a hurtful way for him. So again, his either choosing to pursue true happiness or counterfeit happiness is really what the outcome turns on. But yeah, you're quite right. There's a lot. I mean, many of the Epicureans, for example, are going to say, no way, Jose, it's no human nature here. You're aimed at precisely nothing, so just eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I guess what it seems to me is that a lot of the ancients, like Aristotle, seem to think that happiness is fulfilling your nature and other stuff. And I wonder if if you're missing the distinction between a happy life and then a life that perhaps through things outside your control might be one you maybe we could say could be happy with. I mean, do we want to think of people, Christians who are persecuted, who wind up watching their whole family get slaughtered, are happy, or do we want to say that they can look back on their life choices and say, well, I'm happy with that choice and I have peace, even though my life as a whole hasn't been happy? I'm just worried.
Yeah,
that we
no, you're right.
exclude
I
the
think that's
external
good.
Things which do matter.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so fulfilling your flourishing for a human, to flourish humanly, just is to live a virtuous life. But you can't sit at home blindfolded and on the couch being virtuous. I mean, it demands action and other things, as you say, of course. But yeah, if we define happiness in the sense of feelings, well then of course we would never be able to say that anyone who either goes to the dentist or has experiences terrific suffering can never say their lives are happy. But as I'm saying, I don't think that's a good definition of true happiness. So sure, this is why, I mean, this is precisely why people whose circumstances and feelings are decidedly unpleasurable can nonetheless say that they have a happy life, where happy means they don't control their circumstances, but they do control their virtue. They do control whether they respond in virtue or not. Now, given, like in the vernacular, if you're just talking out of a context like this, no, I should think using the word happy would probably suggest all the wrong things. But this isn't because there's something wrong with the word happy. There's something wrong with most people's understanding of happiness. Yeah, but I think your points, your concerns are a good one there. Yes, Sonia.
Happiness being defined this way, is there any difference between this and what we call joy?
Well, I don't know. I suppose we'd have to work up a definition of joy to find out for certain. C.S. Lewis is happy to use the word joy and the word happy interchangeably in a technical sense. But I think just in ordinary sense, when we just meet in the street and say, hey, you seem joyful, typically we don't mean, it seems to me that you're flourishing according to your nature. We typically are just using a shorthand for, I can detect that your feelings are, say, you are feeling pleasurably, you're feeling happy. So this is a tricky thing here. There's a non-technical kind of vernacular sense in which we use these words that's unmoored from any deeper traditional sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have a question as far as you mentioned John Stuart Mill as far as the hedonism, that aspect
Mm-hmm.
of the ancients. And just curious here, where the change from the ancients to the hedonism, where did that come out of the Enlightenment period, or where do you see that actually transformed?
You mean leaving behind the ancient view and moving? Well, so this is a good question. It goes back to Ray's first point. It was never the case that all of the ancients held this view and then, wow, something went haywire and then other disparate views came in. There were always those who said, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. It's all about your feelings, your pleasurable experiences. John Stuart Mill's an interesting case. Well, he gets the credit because his work survived better, but he is inheriting a view from his dad's friend, Jeremy Bentham. But it's a little tweaked it's kind of spruced up, Hedonism, Utilitarianism by John Stuart Mill. He notices that in the medieval world, there are different guilds, different groupings of people, say blacksmiths and archers, whatever medieval guilds there were, I wasn't there. And it seems to have come to be commonplace that it was thought each of these guilds had its own proper flourishing. Now notice this is itself a departure from the ancient view, but you can see it's kind of a plausible evolution from that view. But he thought that this ran into contradictions in any given person's life because you have different claims on your moral life from different spheres of influence. So say you are in the blacksmith guild, but you're also part of a certain family. There's expectations about your behavior placed on you there. Say you're part of a certain religious order. There's expectations, and inevitably, as many medieval works of literature can attest, people find themselves struggling for which has the greatest claim on their life. John Stuart Mill thinks this is silly, and I tend to agree with him, but he thinks that the answer is to do away with all of those various spheres of influence that he collectively calls morality and look to one maxim. So this is where your enlightenment bit came in. This is an a priori principle that can just sort of save the day for all these things. Greatest happiness principle. You pursue the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of people, where happiness is absence of pain and present pleasure. Unhappiness is the opposite. So it's not just a clean from one stepping stone to the next, from the ancient view to John Stuart Mill's utilitarianism. But I do think that it's we can see an arc there. I hope that gets to your question. Yeah.
Would you not say that, or would you agree that hedonism, the thought of hedonism started early on in time?
Yeah, I would say hedonism started in Genesis 3.
Your design.
Sure. Yeah, it's one creative way to work at odds to your own design. Yeah, sure, I would be happy to say that. Absolutely. Yeah. I would say utilitarianism was around long before it was called utilitarianism or worked out into a carefully articulated theory. I mean, say what you like about John Stuart Mill, that dude's great at articulating his view. Yeah. Brilliant writer. Yeah, that's good. Yeah? Man. I thought I would get a lot more pushback on this. I left more time maybe than I needed for Q&A. I thought surely everyone's convinced that the things they think make them happy now are pretty much doing the trick. And when I say something broad like, none of those things are actually making you happy, I thought surely there's a video gamer in here who's going to say, hold the phone. Yeah, okay, speaking of video gamers, Katie. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, kind of touching on what you said, the idea of the true happiness is not supposed to be a fleeting thing. So I, come from a perspective, can talk to somebody who's trying to find their happiness and exploring different things in society, such as, something prevalent, homosexuality. Maybe
Okay.
trying to look into that for their happiness. If I'm having a discussion with them and explaining, I find my true happiness in the Lord, how can I use this kind of argument to show them maybe where they're not having true happiness when they're firmly believing that, no, this is where I'm happy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, people, as we said earlier, people pursue what they perceive to be their happiness, this euphoric state of pleasurable feelings in a variety of ways, and sexual gratification, the example you mentioned, is a pretty common one, especially today. How can you convince a person that that's not actually rendering them happy? Is that the question? Well, I think that's you always must be sensitive to people. You don't want to just stomp in on and crush creating a context of clash is typically not going to engender further conversation. But I think from experience you can point to, you know, why do you feel the need to keep going on? What are you continuing to search for? Does it seem like the more sexual exploits you engage in, the more you have an insatiable desire for a greater number, an increasingly greater number? I think you can sort of point to experience and sort of reduce to absurdity the claim that desire is intrinsically satisfiable. It's not even in principle. It doesn't admit of a maximal degree. It must, by its nature, be never satisfied. That's J.P. Moreland's, the paradox that J.P. was talking about, and incidentally, chapter 1 of the Klaus Histler and J.P. Moreland book that I raised up. We don't want to just immediately say that sort of all rich people are these terrible. And by the way, if you're super rich, one way you can prove you're not a terrible person, get with me afterwards. Got all kinds of ideas for that. But speaking now of a very broad brush, many people who become hooked on the pursuit of, say, the accumulation of wealth continue to just hoard it up for no other reason than to achieve a continually greater pile of stuff, money. Which, there's nothing wrong with having money, of course. But if you have in mind that this, if I could just have X number of more dollars, then I'll be truly happy, you notice directly that you never, even in principle, achieve X. Yeah. Yeah.
Is the fact that in hedonism the things that give you happiness are not intrinsically satisfying, is that how it's a paradox?
The paradox doesn't pick on, you say hedonism, you don't mean utilitarianism in particular. You just mean any view that says fulfilling temporary pleasures or feelings will be true happiness. Is that the one that falls victim to paradox?
I think you mentioned hedonism. I wasn't sure if you said hedonism is a paradox. I just didn't understand how exactly it works out to be a paradox.
Yeah, so the paradox is this. If you have that mistaken view of happiness, then paradoxically, you can never achieve happiness. So you have a view of happiness that's defined such that it's unachievable. But it seems at the very least highly incongruous with what is part and parcel of human nature, that we would have by nature something unattainable. Yep. And furthermore, the paradox is compounded this way. The more effort you expend trying to achieve happiness that way, the more painfully aware you'll become that it can't happen that way. It'd be like the view that the more money you deposit into the bank, the poorer you will become. It seemed like a really weird view of wealth gaining or something. Yeah, Tyler.
What role do you think the Imago Dei plays in flourishment?
What role does our being in the image of God play in flourishing? Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that it makes possible our flourishing humanly. So to be human just is to have human nature. Well, what about this human nature? It apparently doesn't mean that we're all tall. Look around the room and see. It apparently doesn't mean that we're all white or black or male or female. What does it involve? And well, the core concept for the Christian tradition is that having human nature involves being created in God's image. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's a long story to tell there, but it means being a person. It means having moral awareness, rationality, etc. So this is what makes possible our flourishing humanly. So this is the big reason why humans flourish humanly and not seagullishly or rosebushishly. I think that is also the explanatory basis for why our flourishing involves intrinsic good, must involve intrinsic good. If we say just evolved according to random genetic mutation, then it'd be very difficult for me to see how we have intrinsic value. I can see very clearly how we would all evolve the sense that, hey, humans are the best, don't kill humans. Maybe kill other things, but don't kill humans. But as J.P. Moreland says, that's not intrinsic value, that's just speciesism. That's just a groundless bias toward our own species. We may really like it and we may find it useful, but notice finding it useful suggests that there's another question. Finding it useful for what? That's instrumental value, not intrinsic value. So yeah, I think actually sort of the Imago Dei's context for really theologically understanding all of this about human flourishing. just to tack on to that, sorry, I'm slipping into theology prof mode here. The particular activities in which we engage for flourishing are also underlined by the Imago Dei. So what's the first thing you learn about the Creator in whose image you're made in Genesis? Well, that He's a worker. This is why we find flourishing in a correct understanding of work, and why it hurts really bad when we introduce sin into the world, that work is now painful and frequently unpleasant. Yeah, so I think there's a long story to be told there about the connection of the Imago Dei and flourishing. In class, when the students' fingers break the shoulder plane, that's when I assume, so that's why I keep, your fingers came up to your mouth, and I thought, oh, he's about to ask a question. Kind of had my hopes up there. Yeah, any other questions from you guys? Just like you're trying to decide if you have a question? Coax it out of you.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. So this has been a conundrum I've heard. So whenever it comes into regard of happiness. So in the sense of, let's say, like a person dedicates his life into doing charity.
Yeah.
Puts in and then puts all his effort, puts his time and his money into it, without trying to seek personal gain.
Yeah.
Would at the end of his life, that feeling, would you necessarily call that true happiness, or would you call that necessarily just the feeling of happiness?
No, that's a great question.
The pursuit of
Yeah.
God in that sense.
I think adding that on, I think there's three things we can say to that. And I'll get through the first two, and if I can still remember the third, I'll give you three. Not to make a mockery of your example, but if we take this literally, if we imagine what is not possible, a person who literally commits everything to charity, well, I suppose it's possible for about 2 weeks. But I mean, literally, it's an unlivable position. It would actually be a gross misuse of it would be an unreasonable action, right? Pursuing charity is not the kind of thing that should be done unreasonably. It should be done reasonably. Reasonably done, you can, of course, bring about much greater good for much longer. But I take it you didn't mean like actually a person who literally does it all the time.
Yeah, I'm not saying like not in the long borderline that everybody should.
Yeah, but assuming a person allows for their needs and say provides for their family, etc., then it spends all of their reasonable time engaging in charity, then I'd say we have a really great person going here. This is a much more plausible thing. So the question then is this person doing the charity because it will make them feel good? Sorry? Yeah, because it makes them feel good, or are they doing it for the right reasons? Is that the question?
Yeah, well, my thing would be if they're doing it for the right reasons necessarily, I guess help the family and to help those around them.
Yeah.
At the end of their life, when they kind of sit back, would you necessarily call what they're feeling in the sense? Would that be true happiness, or would that just be the feeling of happiness?
Oh, it's an even better question than I thought it was at first. Kudos to you there.
Not.
Well, I like the question a lot. So you might think this person has gone out of their way, let's soup it up a bit and say they've gone out of their way not to act such that no one sort of mistakenly treats them as though they're doing it for the approbation. And then could a person sort of on their deathbed, the person's kids are around and sort of helping them recollect all the wonderful things they've done, and the person's like, no, stop it, quit it, you're at the very last instant, you're ruining like my status before God or something. No, I don't think so. Of course the person will feel good about what they have done. I think, when C.S. Lewis says that if you put second things first, you don't get either first goods or second goods, but when you put first goods first, I'm butchering C.S. Lewis quote here, sorry C.S. Lewis, you put first goods first, then you get both first and secondary goods. I think this is the idea that we can at least adapt it here. If you are, and I have no doubt this happens, I mean, if you've seen the DVD by Acton Institute called Poverty, Inc., some really awful examples of this. people can engage in professional charity giving for all the wrong reasons, perhaps even to get rich or to become famous. To the unknowing observer, say like you and me, we might think, well, this person is like the modern-day Mother Teresa. I mean, this person's a saint. But we just don't know the facts of the matter. We're just grossly mistaken in that case. And of course, our awareness of facts is irrelevant to whether or not it's true happiness. Let's just stipulate that your person is doing their charity work for all the right reasons. I say, of course, this person is engaging in a wonderful way in human flourishing and is acting to make possible other people's human flourishing as well. Then they're putting the first thing first, and they will surely accrue good feelings for it later. But they will probably also accrue some less than pleasant feelings because, you know, it sounds like your guy is living on a shoestring budget. He's probably eating a lot more ramen noodles than he is New York strips. And from time to time, he will probably lament that. So I should think that the feelings will come and go on both sides at the end, so to speak. But it won't change the fact that it sounds like this person is engaged in true eudaimonia, true flourishing, yeah, i.e. has achieved real happiness. I'm probably going to be thinking about that question for a while. It's a good question.
Yeah, that's why I was like pondering, because I was like, I can either say this right or I can fluff it up and it's just not.
Well, that's the way most of the best questions go. You got to stumble through them once or twice to get it out. Yeah, Tyler.
So can a person flourish without a relationship with God?
Yeah, and that's what I was.
Yeah, that's a great question. Can a person flourish without a relationship with God? I don't think so. I don't think so, no. And I think that's one giant implication of the argument I was working through there. Yeah. It's true for all persons, whether they have a relationship with God, whether they are related to God correctly, as C.S. Lewis puts it, as the Apostle Paul puts it, whether they are in Christ or not. It's true for all persons that they have an equal opportunity to flourish because the means are there for everybody. The choice is either, as I close with the quote from C.S. Lewis, to actually be God, and none of us have that as an option, to be unhappy, i.e. to try and pursue happiness by all the wrong means, open the talk with, or to give up our claim on trying to pursue happiness our way, accept that there is only one real happiness, God, find it through self-sacrifice, and then coincidentally, happily, you might say, find through that, by putting into perspective all of our other desires, secondary happiness as well. Does that make sense? Yeah.
One quick question. I guess I'm confused now because of the comments here. So, I guess my question: what is the right reason for the charity work? I mean, it sounds like the right reason is to serve God and serve who He is, but there's
Yeah.
certainly, how if he does it without God, is that considered the right reason though?
Well, I didn't hear that in his question. If you,
So,
Yeah, that's what I was saying was if he was providing for his family,
Uh-huh.
if he was doing service to those around him,
Yeah.
but not necessarily doing it for the Lord, and at the end of his life he looks back and that feeling and happiness comes, would that be necessarily true happiness?
yeah, I got you.
Not
So,
being for the
I'm
Lord,
all right. I just missed a dimension of your question. Yeah.
Or
That's what
is
I'm
that just a
confused.
feeling?
Yeah,
of
that's good
happiness?
clarification. Good. I think, so we sort of use the concept of a free rider here. You can, so just in the same way that Christians think that non-believers can have a perfectly good awareness of the difference between right and wrong without knowing God, it remains the case that they depend on God, because He is the source, the grounding, we would say, of right and wrong, of moral truths. They are freeloading on theism in this case, I would say. And I should think something similar will be happening here in the case of your guy. I'm sorry, for some reason I just took for granted that you were describing a guy who's a believer in that case. For a non-believer engaged in charity, and of course there are plenty of, I mean, Doctors Without Borders, all kinds of organizations do this, they would just be freeloading on atheism. They would be, on theism. They would be depending for their work on foundational truths that only make sense on theism in order to engage in these things. Yeah.
So would the happiness they get from that freeloading
Well,
be true or faux happiness?
that's a great question. I think it would just be faux happiness, temporary happiness. Say, why do this? Because it makes me feel good to help my fellow man, sort of thing. Mhm.
Would it perhaps also be explained by the fact that they are not really, even though they're doing these acts, they're not doing them truly in accordance to their nature, since our nature is to glorify God, and that's not part
Well, it's tricky. I didn't say that our nature is to glorify God. I have a hard time really sort of making sense out of that claim. I think when we're fulfilling our nature, it will glorify God. But I don't know what saying it is glorifying God. It's a very nebulous, funny phrase to me. I think I really want to shy away from attributing motives to people. It's hard for me to really know what's in a person's head. But yeah, I think that it's true metaphysically that there can only be flourishing in this way if we have natures, and these are only possible if Christian theism is true, and that there is only one source of true happiness there, and if it is living life in light of being in God. Yeah, I think so. All right, we have time for one or two more questions if you got them.
Keith, what would be the difference between true satisfaction and true happiness?
Difference between true satisfaction and true happiness, Dad? Good question. Yeah, it'd just be a matter of defining what is meant by satisfaction. If satisfaction means something like fulfillment, then if we really wanted to insist that there is a difference between happiness and fulfillment or satisfaction, I might say that it's the word for the gaining of or the lining up our lives properly with reality to achieve happiness. Probably I would just use them synonymously, though.
If you apply that to the question a while ago of the doctor at the end of his life, he could either be truly satisfied of what he's accomplished or be truly happy that he's accomplished.
Yeah, that's good. So using the same words, we have sort of similar sounding but much different in meaning phrases here. If satisfaction there means I set myself a goal and I achieved it, say I wanted to visit 100 countries and work on 100 people in need of my service, to say, well, yeah, that's a good goal to have, but I mean, a kid collecting 100 pennies in his penny bank is a goal. I mean, satisfaction in that sense admits of no intrinsic standard, and so cannot add up to true happiness. Whereas, again, on the other hand, true happiness just is intrinsically valuable. Yeah. There's nothing intrinsically valuable in, say, visiting 100 countries and working on 100 people in need, because the obvious question would be, well, couldn't you have done one more? Well, yes, of course you could have. So there's nothing intrinsic in that. Yeah. All right, yeah, last question. Yeah.
So I want to take like the inverse of the last question. Like, let's take a guy who has a relationship with God, but he is put in a situation where he's not able to flourish. Maybe he's in prison or something like that. Is he able to flourish and to be happy if he can't work? Or
If he's put in a condition where so you said it this way, suppose we have a guy who's a believer, he's put in a context where he can't flourish, can he then flourish?
can he be happy, find happiness?
Which is another way of it. So the way we're using, I think, would be the same thing, flourishing and happiness. Yeah, I think the guy can. So flourishing here in the ancient sense doesn't mean accomplishing any particular thing. It rather means acting virtuously. Our circumstances are frequently out of our control. That really is just incidental to whether we flourish or not. What's crucial to the ancient view of flourishing is how we handle. So you recall early in the program when you read Socrates' Apology, he finds himself in a situation totally out of his control, trumped up charges, death sentence, imprisonment for a short period. Well, can he flourish? Well, sure. He spends almost the entirety of the Apology and a couple of other short dialogues explaining, yeah, I'm not happy in the fleeting sense. I mean, like, nobody looks forward to drinking hemlock. They have a lick of sense. But he's very much a happy, all things considered. He's a flourishing person because in his circumstances, he is acting virtuously. So this just sort of underscores the funny, much different ways in which we use the word happiness. But yeah, it's good. Well, gang, thanks. Those are great questions. I was a little worried at first. No hands went up, but Ray saved the day. Got us rolling along. Cool. I'll hang out for a minute if you want to see these books, if you want to snap a picture of them to track them down for your personal library or something. But enjoy the rest of the day.